And we're back. This is part 2 of 3, Living on Purpose, part 20 of the series. So the first thing that we talked about in the first video was regarding the matter of dealing with loss. There's a time to grieve, a time to keep promises, and a time to pay respect. There's a second thing that we understand as we consider what it means to live on purpose as we look at Genesis 50, and that is this number 2, dealing with regret. Dealing with regret. It is never easy to deal with things that have been left undone due to reasons of past failures or purpose wrongdoing or guilt. All of us have regrets of things we wish we should or should not have done. The real question is, what do we do with unfinished business, or with the guilt that at times we carry that continues to plague us? Sometimes fear is a driving factor, and not our faith, the trust in God that causes us to do what we do. And this was the case with the brothers of Joseph. If you look carefully at the text, we see that after Jacob dies, the brothers begin to talk amongst themselves, and because they didn't believe Joseph and because of guilt, we see a response here. So it says here in verse 15, when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him?" So they sent word to Joseph saying, "Your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father." When their message came to him, Joseph wept. So the brothers, out of guilt, chose to use the excuse that their dad told them to share this news with Joseph. And it was probably not the case at all. 3 things that we understand as we consider what it means dealing with regret. Here's the first thing, A. It is a time to confront past wrongs. It is a time to confront past wrongs. The only reason the brothers of Joseph talked about this after their father's death was because they did not believe or trust that Joseph would not now take revenge on them for what they did to him when he was only 17 years old. What a sad case. And when Joseph heard the news, when it came to Joseph, the message from his older brothers, it grieved him because he knew deep down inside that there was something lacking within his brothers. They lacked the integrity. They lacked the resource that Joseph had, that resource of trusting God and allowing God to be the God of their heritage in their lives. It wasn't so, because the brothers still had some real personal issues, and it seems there was no relationship with God at all. There's a second thing that we find, not only a time to confront past wrongs, but a time to seek forgiveness. The reason the brothers brought up the topic of forgiveness was because of their fear that Joseph would have vengeance on them. Their guilt and lack of faith in God brought them to this point of feeling insecure and uncertain. And what a sad situation. But before we point the accusing finger at the brothers, we need to do some introspection ourselves. Sometimes we have the same issues. Sometimes because of things that we've never really reconciled, we hold guilt within ourselves for not doing what we should have done. And sometimes we hide that guilt by being angry, or we hide the guilt by doing things that appear to be good when they're really not. And of course, this was the case with the brothers. Joseph had long forgiven them, but for whatever reason, they never accepted that forgiveness. And Part of the reason is because I think may have been they had trouble forgiving themselves. I mean, what a horrible thing to do what they did to Joseph so many years ago. There's a third thing that we find as we consider this matter of dealing with regret, and that is this: a time to resolve fear. A time to resolve fear. I want you to notice in verse 20, Joseph's answer, which was a combination of accountability as well as God's grace on them. He told them not to be afraid because obviously they were. But notice what it says here, and we'll look at verse 20 here. Here's what the Word of God says. Verse 20. You intended to, wait a minute, let's go back to verse 19. But Joseph said, don't be afraid. I am in the place of God. Or am I not in the place of God? Question mark. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. How sad that Joseph had to go back and share with his brothers what long ago he already had dealt with. Joseph had already dealt with the issue a long time ago. He forgave them, but the brothers, for whatever reason, because their relationship was not what it should have been with the God of their heritage, were plagued with guilt and plagued with the fact that, something is going to go bad, and because that's just how their lives were, because they were evil men, because they were men who did not choose to do that which was right. The principle is clear. Living on purpose means dealing with regret in order to find renewal and restoration. If ever there is a time to make things right, oh my goodness, on this Father's Day weekend, what a great time to make things right. If you still have your dad, if he's still alive, what a great time to make things right if things haven't been right. And what a good time to just kind of spend time remembering Dad if he's already passed on, to remember him and to be the kind of father that God's called you to be. All right, well, this is part 2 of 3. I'm going to close, and we'll see you at part 3.